The Exoprimal Beta has concluded, and I have a lot to say about it. This game is what you'd expect a hero shooter type game like Overwatch with PvE elements. This game, from just this beta, there was a lot of good things and a lot of not as good things, but not necessarily bad. The first thing I'd like to mention is how entertaining this game was for how bare bones it was, for how little content this beta had. The beta had two things you could do. The main game mode, Dino Crisis, and training, which training doesn't really count, and 10 exosuits. 4 damage, 3 tank, 3 support. The first bit I want to talk about is the Dino Crisis mode. It's basically, you go in there, you pick your exosuits, you pick your team, and you kill dinosaurs, right? You kill the first couple waves, you kill a couple raptors. They had some little special dinosaurs here and there, you kill them. They had a boss dinosaur, you kill them, and you just go through a couple waves of dinosaurs, and it's pretty much as simple as that. Sometimes there's some objectives, an escort mission, a like protect this point or whatever, but the main objective is to complete your task before the enemy team. After you complete all those like little waves, they will then send you to another area, or maybe the same area, but in a different place. It doesn't really matter. They'll send you to the PvP mode, where you play directly against the enemy team, which you don't do anytime prior. There are, I believe, 3 different game modes. There's payload, there's a domination kind of kill confirm type game mode. It's really weird. And then there is their mode that's hammer. That's, I guess, kind of like a search and destroy. It's really awkward. The hammer is the one I like the least, and the payload is the one I like the most. I think these PvP game modes are fine and implemented very creatively. They're pretty much new concepts, and it's even also. It's not like there's an attacker and defender side, which I think is interesting and kind of cool. The part that I wasn't really expecting, though, is how good the Dino Crisis mode was, and how bland and boring the exosuits were. There's so much content in that one Dino Crisis mode, it's kind of crazy. First of all, I think there were only 3 maps during the beta, but there were multiple different routes, and every final PvP game mode was different. But before I talk about the exosuits, I want to talk about the game mode itself. The main problem I had with, while the PvE was fun, I feel like after a while it kind of got kind of repetitive. Well, there were many different routes and different objectives for the PvE. It all kind of felt the same, especially when you're playing with a stack, because you discuss meta and sort of what should be used amongst each other, and you basically just use that and kind of have that established. When you're playing with randoms, it's a bit more different because you're playing with a whole different team each time, so you get more experience playing other roles that you don't normally with a stack. But when I was playing with my stack, after about the first hour or two, first couple games, at some point we were just like, you know what, we just want to go straight to the PvP, because the PvP was so much fun. And the biggest cause of this was not necessarily that the PvE was bad, or it was just like, we just didn't like PvE, because it was fun, but it felt like it had no real impact on the PvP. It felt like the only thing that really mattered was the PvP, and that's not very good. The goal of the PvE is to complete objectives faster, but you never really could complete them that much faster. There were always sort of time delays, and they tried to keep you on the same track, and there were constant comeback mechanics. If you were if you were even like a couple seconds behind, they'll give you this trigger Neosaur, which I don't exactly know what it does, but the winning team will basically, I think their dinosaurs will have more health, and if you're super far behind, they'll give you a boss dinosaur that you can summon on them, and they never want you too far behind, and you never really can get too far behind. I think the farthest behind in a game I've ever gotten was about, I think on payload, they had about a 30% lead. And I wasn't exactly sure why, but it's still not huge, right? You're always roughly within 30, 40 seconds, no more than that. The PvP felt like it had no bearing over the PvE felt like it had no bearing over the PvP whatsoever. Which made it seem kind of like, what am I playing the PvE for? In League, for about the first 10 minutes or so, you're farming bots in your lane. Or if you're jungle, you go around the map and farm the bots in the jungle, right? And then after that is basically when the real team game starts. And now you're actually working as a team to, progress, right? In this game, it feels like, imagine League, where the minions don't give you gold. The only thing that gives you gold is time. Let's say every minute you get like 300 gold, and farming minions gives you nothing. That's what it feels like, and it makes you think, why even have these first 10 minutes of the game? Why even be farming minions? Why even be farming the jungle, right? If just after a minute I get 300 gold. And it just makes the PvE seem very, very pointless. And especially the PvP, especially one game mode Hammer. how hammer works is you charge the hammer by, I believe, killing dinosaurs, and then you break a wall. There's 2 walls, and then there's the center point, and whoever charges their hammer plants their hammer in the center point. The thing is because there's no defusing the hammer when it is planted in the center point. If it's planted, it's done. It's game over. And the thing with this one is this makes things seem even more useless because it makes it seem like there's even more PvE content when you enter the PvP mode. You go in and charge the hammer, and until the hammer is charged at the very final phase, the only thing that really matters is that last team fight. Everything, the entire last 10, 13 minutes of the game did not matter. The PvE mode did not matter. The whole charging the hammers for the last 2 barriers did not matter. The only thing that mattered was that very final team fight where both of your hammers are charged. And I just don't like that. But the game was still very fun and enjoyable to play, even with that. But it just felt like certain things didn't have a lot of meaning. The second thing is that kind of ties into this and might fix this is exosuits were very bland. They're very dry. Exosuits were bland, they were dry, and their kits often lacked cohesion. And I'll explain what I mean later. But first of all, let's start with the bland and dry. The exosuits were super simple. Pretty much every exosuit I had no difficulty picking up and playing, which maybe is a good thing because they want you to switch quite frequently. In most other games, they often try to prevent you from switching. They slap you on the wrist for doing so. They take away your meter, maybe you can't freely switch roles, and this makes it where you're not going to switch very often. This game clearly wants you to switch quite frequently, and I think that's a good thing. And that makes it pretty interesting. But at the same time, sometimes it doesn't. You see, certain characters are better for certain things, right? Because of how this works, certain characters are much better for PvE, and certain characters are much better for the PvP. The greatest example of this is Zephyr versus Murakami. Both of them are melee heroes, but they're almost complete opposite. Murakami does very low damage, and is an absolute beast against hordes of raptors, and even bosses. He has this massive sword, and he just swings through enemies and can hit pretty much anything in front of him. He also has his whirlwind slice that pushes all the dinosaurs off him and does a little bit of damage. He has extremely low damage and is pretty chunky, and it makes him extremely good against raptors because damage doesn't really matter, so he doesn't need to do a whole lot of damage. On the other hand, he doesn't do a lot of damage, but he has one very damaging thing, and that's his parry and his super, which makes him very good against bosses. Against bosses, you just parry, and if you land that successful parry, because they're just dinosaurs, they're flailing, they just attack, and you hit that parry, it does massive amounts of damage. On the other hand, he's kind of bad at PvP. His damage, like I said, he does 50 damage per swing, and it takes the average character, Deadeye for example, the guy on the cover, has 500 health. He needs to hit, how much is that? 10 hits, 10 swings? That's quite a lot. And his swings are not like extremely fast. His whirlwind slice provides no help at all. His mobility is quite clunky. It's really just offered so he can get this slam attack that hits massive amounts of dinosaurs, and so he can't really dive. He can't get out of bad situations with his grappling hook because it doesn't have a lot of range, and it doesn't go very far. You're much better with a rig like a catapult for mobility than his grappling hook. And this makes him almost worthless in PvP. However, the opposite is true for the other melee hero, Zephyr. Zephyr is like a dive hero, basically. He has melee swings just like Murakami, but they're not as big. They don't go as much around, they don't go as far, they have deceivingly short range. I was in fact surprised by how stubby they were sometimes, they felt, and he has no real way to hit large amounts of dinosaurs. He has his E, which is this sort of cannon spike type kick that launches all the dinosaurs near him up for a combo basically, and he has this shoulder bash that can launch them back, but those have 10 to 13 second cooldowns. You can't reliably use this against dinosaurs. He also has the lowest health in the game, I believe, at 350, making him he can just get swarmed by raptors, and there's not much he can do. However, he does an absurd amount of damage, especially when he uses his E into shoulder bash and does extra damage when it hits the wall. This can make him just absolutely instantly kill pretty much most heroes if he dives on them. And he's got 2 teleports to get in, out, and also if you put catapult on, you can use 2 teleports to get in, or move around and kill people, and then get out using catapult, which makes him amazing for dive. His low health also makes it where he's not good for boss fights, unlike Murakami, who has his parry. His low health sometimes, like against the Tyrannosaurus, he has this slam move, and it just instantly kills him. There's no arguing about it, he's just dead. And that's no good. And of course, since he has to be close, there's no real way for him to avoid that slam. This makes them almost polar opposites in a lot of ways. It makes it where Zephyr is almost worthless in PvE, but extremely strong in PvP, and Murakami is the opposite. Murakami is extremely good in PvE against a large amount of raptors, but worthless in the PvP mode. I think this is really cool. This is a really cool concept, making some characters specifically made for PvE and some characters specifically made for PvP, but this makes it where it kind of limits the roster by a lot, right? It kind of makes it where characters who are specific for PvP almost don't exist for the PvE, and it makes the roster seem a lot smaller. And the characters for the PvP or the characters for the PvE don't exist for PvP. And on top of that, it makes it where you can only have 5 heroes, correct? It makes it where characters that are more well-rounded and in between to the characters that are specifically specialized for PvP and PvE are going to be seen a lot less. A great example of this is like maybe Deadeye, right? Deadeye is, the dude on the cover. He's supposed to be jack of all trades, master of none, kind of like a Soldier 76, very well-rounded. You don't know who to play, you can play Deadeye, and he's very simplistic, right? He's decent at damage, he's decent at, mobility, he's decent at, he's got decent range, he has decent ability to kill dinosaurs, and decent ability to kill other players. He's very decent at all of these things, but the problem is, why would I play a character that's decent at everything, especially when I can just switch without any repercussions? Why would I play a character that's decent at everything when I can play a character that's very specific and specializes in killing dinosaurs like Murasame, and then when there's the PvP combat, play a character that specializes in killing other players? That's the thing. And I feel like a lot of characters will suffer from this. A lot of characters have very specific uses, especially like Vigilant. There's not very many good times to use Vigilant. The only times Vigilant was really ever good or usable, or even used, was on pretty much the payload. Because she could hit your payload she could hit your payload from her payload. And it was mildly annoying, and it wasn't really that big of a deal. But the thing is you could do it because with any other character, there's not really anything else you can do, And then after that, Vigilant would usually switch off. And it makes it where you're really going to see only a handful of characters. And the characters are just super bland and super dry. There was just not a lot of depth to them. And I think one big thing that makes a hero or a character have a lot of depth is the amount of things you can do with one move, right? And this game really lacks in that department. There's usually only one specific use for a move, and it results in often one specific use for a character, which I get it that maybe they wanted them to be simple and easy on purpose because they want you to switch so much, but the thing is after a while it's going to get boring. And especially when people figure things out, it's going to be like, at this wave, everyone runs this character. At this wave, everyone runs this character. And people find out the meta. A great example of a character with a lot of depth in a move is in one move that I think has a lot more depth than some of these characters have in their entire kit is simply Junkrat's Concussion Mine in Overwatch. This is just one off the top of my head, and I don't have Overwatch on PC, and I'm too lazy to record footage, so you're just going to have to look at my hand movements and agree with me. Junkrat's Conk Mine has several different uses, and this makes it an extremely interesting move. For starters, it's used as mobility. It's his only real mobility option. It allows him to move vertically and horizontally, depending on the angle that he stands within it. So automatically, it gives him so much versatility in movement, and he can, plant it and then walk up to it, explode it. He can throw it behind himself and explode it immediately for good horizontal distance. And on top of that, he also has more than just that. He can, of course, it's a mine. It's a fucking explosive. He can use it on other enemies at point blank. It does massive amounts of damage. He can basically do this little frame cancel trick and do an instant kill mine trick with throwing his mine. How does it work again? I think it's you shoot, you cancel that animation with the mine throw and explode it or something like that, and it instantly kills the enemy player, if they're at 200 health, like most normal characters, right? So he can just instantly kill people at point blank range. On top of that, he can use this as a level of crowd control. He can throw it, and while it doesn't do that much damage if they're not like right on top of the mine, it has a massive amount of bounce back, so he can throw it and basically use it as a CC to get people off the point when needed, to just be mildly annoying, mess with their line, all these little things. Also, if you want to use it like this, you can set up it works well with his trap, allowing him to throw the mine down, and he can explode it. If the trap is activated, he can just use it by itself to cover maybe a doorway, and just have a little bit of extra damage, maybe some knock around, something, right? So there's many different uses, and that mobility cannot be understated. This game, there's no real moves that I found that have so many uses like that mine. They tried to replicate it with Mirage's Detonate Fire Crossbow, but it's really just not the same. It's super different, and it will go to my point. I'm gonna make a point where this is Capcom's very first hero shooter, or I believe it is. I don't know if they made one in the past. I don't think they have, but it shows. I feel like they've done their research, they've done their homework, but they don't really understand why some of these things exist. Some characters have just a lack of cohesion. They feel like moves were just kind of thrown on them, right? And this goes really fitting with Barrage and Nimbus are the two that I felt were the worst about this. Barrage, for example, I'll talk about his detonate, of course. He has this move where he jumps in the air and he can shoot his fire crossbow, and he can detonate it whenever, pretty much. And it sets up this little firewall that hurts dinosaurs and is really good at setting perimeters and stopping, raptors from getting in and stuff. So it's a pretty good move. It does a really good amount of damage and is really good crowd control. However, it also has this effect, though, where if you stand on it and detonate it, Barrage launches in the air. I found it almost fucking worthless. You can't really change the angle like Jungrat's Mine, so you can't get like horizontal mobility or anything. Also, just throwing out the fire arrows often feels very awkward, because he jumps in the air and he slows down in the air and then shoots the arrows, and there's just a lot of frames, a lot of things with it, and it makes it just, there's no momentum, right? Even if he could change the angle and get a bunch of horizontal distance, he has to jump up, shoot the thing, and then run over, and then jump off it, and when you use that move, it kills all momentum you might have even had, and you're not going to use it like that. And Barrage doesn't have much reason to be up in the air. There aren't really any obstacles to jump over like Overwatch. The only reason for it maybe is Barrage's ultimate. He flies around and he explodes, so people might not be looking up when you use Barrage's ult, and that's really the only use of it, is that one specific use. And then his other two abilities that he has is he has a roll that's similar to Deadeye's, but it's a little bit longer cooldown, and he has a little explosion on it. The thing is so this move is actually kind of nice because it has two uses: little explosion, so it can kill raptors, get them away from you, get off them, do a little bit of extra damage also on bosses. I was using it often, shooting the grenade launcher and then using the roll to explode around, just get a little bit of extra damage, and then also, of course, evasion. So this move is all right, but it's the problem is it's one of the more moves with more depth in a game like Paladins and Overwatch. This would be one of the moves with less depth. It does two things: get off me with a little bit of damage, and mobility. Take a very simple move like McCree's roll, which is kind of like Deadeye's roll, except for there's one key difference. Both of the rolls are very similar in a lot of ways, as they're just a small mobility option. But the second thing is McCree's roll does a special thing where it reloads his gun when he uses it, which adds a whole nother layer of depth, because sometimes you might use it as a mobility option, not as a mobility option, but just as a quick reload. And this is very important, and no other move really has these kinds of depth. Barrage's last move is very underwhelming. It's just this E that I think stuns dinosaurs, and players, I didn't really pay too much attention about it. He kind of just, it's a little flash grenade, and you just throw it out. Like, there's not, it doesn't really have that much of an impact. It's just kind of, I have it, it's off cooldown, I'm going to throw it out, which I don't think there's a single special move in Overwatch or Paladins that I feel like that. Out of any bit I've played, it's just, I've never been like, oh, I have this off cooldown, I don't know what to do with it, I'm just going to throw it out. It's kind of just a move that exists, and I feel like they didn't know what to do for his last ability. The other thing is they don't know how to make grenade launchers. I'm a grenade launcher connoisseur. I love grenade launchers. And his grenade launcher is just, please tell me if you agree. Maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm just a bot, but please tell me if you agree. This grenade launcher feels so clunky to use. So clunky. The projectile speed is so slow. The fire rate, I'm fine with. It's a grenade launcher. I'm cool with it being a little bit slow. 6 ammo, that's a little low, but I can live with that too. But the projectile speed is so slow, it doesn't bounce. It fucking rolls like a bowling ball, which is alright, I guess. I prefer grenade launchers that bounce. I don't hate rolling grenade launchers. But the thing is because they move at almost the same speed whether or not they roll or you shoot them straight, and the way the grenade shoots is super awkward, because not only is it super slow, it's like so slow, you walk almost as fast as the fucking grenade does, which is super awkward. But not only that, but it shoots, and it feels like a RPG, like a missile launcher. It shoots and it goes very straight, and then just kind of fucking it goes very straight and then just kind of drops off. And it's just like, what? On top of all of that, when you shoot it, most grenade launchers, how they work is they shoot, and then when they hit the ground, then a timer starts until they explode. In this game, it's just as soon as you shoot it, a timer is already started until it explodes. And well, some games, like I think Overwatch makes it where a timer starts as soon as you hit the ground and then it explodes. But they do have like a little timer as soon as you shoot it, but it's so long, like you can shoot it directly up in the air and then have it come down and it won't explode before then. This game, it's not like that. You can shoot directly up in the air and it will explode on the way down. And that's not good. It just makes it where it's just like, it makes it where you can't really artificially change the range of the angle you shoot at. You know what I mean? In Overwatch, if I want a little bit extra range, I can shoot at an angle and get an extra angle for more range. This game, you shoot it straight, and a lot of times it will explode before it even hits the ground, and that's no good. And that makes it where it's just like there's no depth to the grenade launcher. It's just going to explode after a certain amount of distance, and that makes it where you can just walk out of his range, and it's not a good thing. But yeah, the grenade launcher is super awkward. I'm sure they'll fix that though. The projectile speed is so slow. Like I was having, maybe I'm just a bot, but I was having trouble shooting the little guy. It took me a while to get used to just shooting the guys walking back and forth in the training mode, and that's not a good thing, especially for someone like me who's played characters with grenade launchers for as long as I remember, right? I love grenade launchers. I love angled projectiles and stuff like that, and this is like one of the very first times I felt uncomfortable using one, right? It's not that big of a deal, of course, when you actually play the game, because most of it's dinosaurs. You're just shooting into a horde of dinosaurs and it doesn't really matter, but it felt more comfortable just to shoot it at the ground and then watch it roll, and that's not a good thing in a grenade launcher. The other character that I felt had a lack of cohesion is Nimbus. Nimbus, I feel like, is probably was the worst character in the beta. I felt like, very incoherent. Her whole kit didn't have much rhyme or reason. I felt like she was probably supposed to be DPS, and they quickly tried to change her to healer, and she was very awkward, to say the least. First of all, she had extremely low damage, 50 damage per shot. However, she was hit scan. Very few characters in this game were, or she at least had long range. I don't know if for sure she was hit scan, but close enough. But she shot extremely slow, so it didn't much matter. And her main thing was she could switch between a healing mode and assault mode. The thing is it was super clunky. It was not like, like Lucio or something where it's just like you press the button and you do it quickly. It was just clunky, man. It was like maybe 3 seconds of just switching. She does this whole animation where she flips the gun and shit, and it felt awful. It was like it felt like there was never a good time to switch. Her other thing was her mobility option was kind of ass. It was this warp. She sent out this clone and it moved. And I was expecting it to be something a bit like Sombra's, where she can throw it out and then, leave it there for like 30 seconds or something. Or not even that long, just a couple seconds, right? And teleport it to it when she's done, and she could use it, to dive. She could throw it in her back line, teleport later. Something like that, right? And, but no, it's active for maybe like 5 seconds. It's hardly active at all. They don't want you to do that. I think the only real use of it is just a quick escape. And then her last ability is just this barrage thing, and it was a lot like Barrage's grenade throw, where it felt like they were just like, we don't know what to put, just throw something in there. And it was she's very incoherent. I didn't know exactly what she was supposed to do. I think the point of her is she was supposed to be a dive character, a sort of dive support healer, right? So, like a character that would dive like Zephyr, he would dive and she would go in and like pocket him, because her pocketing is pretty good. She doesn't heal everyone really well, but she can heal one specific person extremely well, and I think that's supposed to be the point of her. And she's supposed to be used as sort of a dive, right? This would be all fine and dandy if, 1, her warp didn't suck complete ass. 2, she could do a little bit of damage and sort of help with the dive with, a character like Zephyr. And 3, Skywave didn't exist. Skywave is ridiculously strong. She has her E, which is this black hole that sucks at enemies and fucks with their vision. And it's not just like, oh, it's a little fucky. Like, no, it's, you can't see shit. You can't see jack shit, bro. It's worse than a flashbang in like COD or something, dude. It's just, you're fucked. You're gonna be bumping into walls and shit. Like, it's bad. And also her healing is just stupid strong. She can just shoot, it's just shooting. It's just, if she hits you with the thing, you heal like 200 health. It's fucking ridiculous. And the thing is, well, Nimbus might be good with diving. Skywave is much better, because your team is never going to be that far from the enemy team, and Skywave can just fly in the air, and she can go so high up there and heal a Diving Zephyr and her team at the same time, especially 2 Skywaves. Now, a Vigilant might give her some trouble, but that's about it, you know? And that's another thing, there's not many long-range champions. The only characters in this game that really have long range is like Vigilant, of course, the Sniper, Deadeye, and Nimbus. Nimbus sucks ass. You're not going to do much damage, you know, shooting with Nimbus. Vigilant is good in specific situations. She's pretty ass besides her sniper shot is alright, and her ult is really good. And Deadeye, like I said, Deadeye's alright. He's very well rounded, as he should be, but why play Deadeye when I can play a character that specializes in something in a game that doesn't give a shit or penalize if I switch characters frequently? So you honestly don't even see long range champs very well, and no other character has range. No other character on the roster. Look through the roster, there's not a single other character that has good range. Skywave, of course, her shots go forever, but projectile speed is so slow, you're not going to hit another Skywave with a Skywave. So those are really my only real complaints with the game so far. And yeah, like I said, I feel like the exosuits are kind of poorly designed. And it feels like I'm ripping on the game a lot, but I actually very much enjoyed it. It was very enjoyable. And especially because it's just a testament to how good the gameplay is that it kept my interest for so long, despite having such boring characters. You know, I think the gameplay there's really something there, but I think the only real solution to a lot of these things is some kind of currency, right? Some kind of, I don't want to say in-game currency because that's bad connotation, but like some kind of in-match currency is a better word. Something like, you know, Valorant, CSGO, League of Legends is, I think, the better example I should go with. And Paladins, right? I think the way to fix this is fix not only all of my complaints, not only the PvE not having much of the PvE and the dinosaurs not having much of an impact on the game, you know, characters having a lack of depth and a lack of cohesion in their kits is a currency of some kind, or levels, right? Having basically a way where if I kill dinosaurs, I gain XP or money in that specific match, and I can use it to buy upgrades. Faster projectile speed for maybe a character like Barrage, you know, quicker cooldowns. The cooldowns I found were extremely long. They weren't terrible, but they were really long, and it felt like a lot of times I was just, you know, holding a left click because, you know, I didn't have my fucking cooldowns finished and I couldn't do shit, you know, increased speed, you know, all these little things, right? Maybe increased fire rate, etc. Okay? Little things like this. The main problem with this is that they want you to switch suits frequently. And this is kind of like a have your cake and eat it too situation where you can't make a character so strict with being able to buy items and having all these things while also allowing you to switch characters frequently, and that's the problem. You know, being able to buy abilities, being able to buy items that give buffs and stuff like that. But there is a solution, right? And that's loadouts. Now, I don't like loadouts, but I'm saying something like Paladins. Paladins has a lot of different variations. First of all, they have these cards that are basically loadouts, and you select before the game, right? You can go in and select cards, and they give very minor buffs. You set them on like a scale of 1 to 5, and you have a certain amount of points, and you know, 5 points is the strongest level of card, 1 point the weakest, and you can have up to 5 different cards that have different buffs. And I think they give you like a selection of like 20 different cards. So you can make nuance between characters like that, right? And then there are other things is they give you 3 different variations of character that you can pick at the start of the game. Something like, for just a general example, a character who might have a fully auto weapon, you can pick a variation that makes their gun a semi-auto, but they do more damage, right? So it can change the character drastically in such minor ways, you know? And then the last thing they have is you actually do get coins. You do get a currency, and you can buy minor upgrades that are general for all characters, right? You can buy, you know, a lifesteal, right? You can buy faster riding, which will allow you to get into the game faster, basically decreasing your respawn time. You can buy a thing that does cauterize, which makes it where you, after you do damage to an enemy, there's a short period of time where they take less healing, allowing you to focus characters much quicker.
Post note, I went back to go open Paladins after like over a year and a half of maybe not playing it. And I went to go check the items. You know, I was getting footage, right, for this. So I went to go check the items. Oh, boy. I cannot believe what I saw. They removed Cauterize. Staple. I was so shocked. Anyway, back to the video.
These are 3 different layers in one game that can add a lot more variety to one character. And that's something I really think is interesting, and I think Exoprimal could do something similar without having you to go through massive amounts of menus, like League, and you don't have time in this game to go through massive amounts of menus and just not make it awkward, right? So make it where basically you get levels for killing dinosaurs, and in turn, you basically set beforehand what kind of character you want, right? You set separate abilities. Let's take a character like Barrage, for example, and give him a lot more variation in his kit, right? Make it where maybe you can switch out his grenade launcher for, let's say, a regular rocket launcher where he shoots straight projectiles. Maybe switch it out for a sticky grenade bomb thing. Allow different, little things like his Q, his dodge roll, maybe switching it to make it also a detonate. A very small thing. Having these different loadouts that could fundamentally change characters in a lot of ways. And I think a very interesting thing that they could do is not having designated healers. This could be something that's extremely interesting. In this game, of course, they have designated healers like pretty much every other game, but they could do something like make it where you can set a loadout, a class, that makes it where certain characters aren't designated healers. You can make it where someone like Skywave, okay, she starts out and she just doesn't do healing. She has no healing abilities. In this game, healing is kind of just something that's tacked onto her kit. If she hits you, you're healed. But make it where she's more of a DPS, and adding healing onto, she has multiple paths, right? You can make her do increased damage with a certain loadout and give her like increased mobility and all these things, and make her more like a hero like Pharah in Overwatch, where she flies around and is just a DPS and just wreaks havoc from the sky. Or you could try to go a healer route, which makes it where when you hit an ally, they heal. And you could do things like this for also Nimbus. You can make her more like a Tracer type character, or even like a McCree that's more of a hit scan long range character. Have different abilities that increase her shooting speed. So you can make like fully auto pistols, or just keep the clunky revolvers, right, for a more accurate shot. And then make a healing sort of a secondary ability. Small things like this. And do this for basically pretty much all the characters. Now, they do have some kind of loadout system, but we were unable to access in the beta, as they have a level system, and every level you unlock stuff, and you can also unlock stuff for certain characters, which I don't know if this is the same thing. This could just be like a loadout like Call of Duty, where your character is like this all the time, but I'm saying make this related to the dinosaurs themselves, and make this sort of an element of that, where you gain XP or currency or whatever to level up through that. I think that kind of system could be extremely interesting if implemented well, where it's almost like a choose your own adventure, right? And you could have maybe a healer Krieg, right? Krieger has his big ass shield, and maybe you could instead change his stun missiles to sort of healing missiles and lock onto allies around him and then heal them. Or have a ability that makes it where his shield is weaker, but any allies within his shield are healed, something like this. All these things could help increase depth of characters and giving varieties of abilities, different things you can tack onto a character. I think they tried to do something similar with this by adding the rig system, but I feel like the rig system it's a cool concept, but was poorly executed, and I think should kind of be intertwined with the sort of XP gold level system that I just explained. The rig system I feel like was very poorly done. Oftentimes I rarely thought of my rig, I rarely cared about my rig, and the rigs just felt like they didn't have really any effect. Oftentimes I'd run catapult. Later, when I started to get more of a grip of the game, I started switching to drill for the boss dinosaurs, and sometimes I run catapult, but on certain characters it just didn't feel like it mattered at all. Like I would play Skywave as support to heal, and the rig I almost never used. I never found a time to really use it. Same thing with like Krieger. And they want you to switch between these things, but the thing is you can switch so easily, right? And like with the exosuits, there is a tiny bit of repercussion, and as the time that you are a pilot to switch between the exosuits. But with the rigs, there's really no repercussion. You can just go in and you can just switch it like that, and you have to wait for the cooldown, but that's just no big deal, right? And it makes it feel like instead of picking your rig and making it where your character is more unique, right? Where it's like you have some variation in how you pick your character and how you play your character by setting what rig you have. It feels more like you just have all these other abilities, you just have to switch to them in this inconvenient menu. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. The game is extremely fun, but the exosuits are just kind of lacking. Without completely reworking the exosuits and giving more depth, the only way to or reworking the whole game itself, the only way to sort of keep what's already been established in the beta and making the characters more interesting is sort of a have your cake and eat it too, and causes a lot of conflict. But I think it can be done. Just having loadouts, having some kind of XP, some kind of currency, something to make the PvE matter, and having a variety of abilities I can choose from with a character, having a variety of options that I can change my character with, and something like having it where you select your loadout, you get XP for killing dinosaurs, and you get currency also, and the currency is basically a separate system like Paladins, where it's just small buffs that are general to any character, and then when you switch, you still keep those buffs. Makes it where switching to just whatever optimal for the situation isn't going to be as common, because I might be playing Barrage, and then I might have like faster projectile speed, and fast projectile speed, I don't know, increased movement, and I don't know, maybe a ricochet, right, to make it where my grenades bounce and don't roll anymore. But those abilities might not be useful at all if I switch to someone like Vigilant, right? An increased, ricochet won't matter that much on a sniper rifle, right? That sounds like a cool ability. Have that as a general mechanic where you can shoot off walls and bounces. That'd be pretty dope. Ricochet might not matter as much for someone like Vigilant, right? An increased splash damage won't matter for someone like Vigilant. It might only affect like the ice mine, and that's not worth it. I'd much rather have something much more for a character like Vigilant, who's mostly stationary. Increased speed won't matter that much for someone like Vigilant. Increased projectile speed won't matter at all. So it'll make it where it still deters me from switching to Vigilant, but I can't. So it can make you think about what passive abilities you pick, what passive upgrades you pick. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I think this game's super tight. I'm really looking forward to launch and see the whole game. But like I said, the exosuits are just dry. They're just boring. They just need a little bit more spice, something to them. But the game itself is extremely fun. It's extremely fun, and it's amazing with how boring the exosuits and the heroes were. The thing that I usually care about the most, right, or the characters in the game, that it still captured my attention for almost 10 hours playing the beta. But the thing is just having fun gameplay and not having fun characters will only get you so far. Because at some point, it doesn't matter how much depth the gameplay has, it's going to get boring. You need more characters. You need better characters. And I don't expect, the base roster of vanilla, especially the beta characters, to be very interesting. Often they're not, Usually the starter characters are very bland, very boring, very dry, very milquetoast, because they want something simple that will hook you in initially. When they have a lack of cohesion and their moves have a lack of depth, you can make a simple character, but still give them a lot of depth, But that's all I have to say. So, I don't know. Tell me what you thought about the beta. Tell me what you thought about my opinion. That's about it.